External radiation exposure refers to radiation which comes from a source outside the body. Human beings have always been exposed to continuous external radiation from natural sources. Natural background radiation includes cosmic rays from the sun and from other sources in space. Background radiation also comes from the Earth's rocks and soil, which contain naturally occurring radioactive isotopes such as radon, thorium, uranium, and radium. In recent years, man-made sources of radiation exposure have been added to our environment. These sources include medical and dental X-rays, fallout from weapons testing, increased exposure to cosmic radiation during high-altitude jet plane travel, nuclear power generation, and consumer products such as television, lantern mantles, and smoke detectors. This chart shows the average individual annual exposure to radiation for the population of the United States. 3/4 of the radiation exposure comes from natural background radiation. Almost all of the rest of the radiation exposure we receive each year, approximately 23%, comes from medical and dental radiation. The remaining 2% comes from nuclear power generation, consumer products, and other uses of nuclear energy. Occupational exposures from sources such as the production of radioisotopes, reactors used for research, the production and reprocessing of nuclear fuel, and radioactive waste disposal also contribute to workers' external radiation exposure. Internal radiation exposure refers to radiation which comes from a source which has been taken into the body. Naturally occurring radioactive isotopes, such as potassium-40 and carbon-14, are in the food we eat. Man-made sources of internal radiation include radioactive drugs used to diagnose and treat disease, and unintentional contamination of the body with radioactive materials. Radioactive contamination can enter the body through inhalation, through ingestion, by absorption through unbroken skin, or directly through damaged skin and open wounds. When they enter the body, some isotopes concentrate in specific parts of the body. For example, the body cannot tell the difference between radioactive iodine-131 and the non-radioactive isotope, and moves all iodine to the thyroid gland. This is the basis of radiation therapy to help shrink thyroid tumors. The body thinks that strontium-90 and radium are calcium and deposits these isotopes in the bones. The 4 primary types of ionizing radiation that can cause biological damage are gamma rays and X-rays, neutron radiation, beta particles, and alpha particles. Each type of radiation could cause different amounts of biological damage because they differ in the amount of energy they deposit in the body tissue. Gamma, beta, and neutron radiation are the principal sources of external radiation. Gamma radiation and high-energy X-rays are the same type of radiation. They travel very fast through both air and the body and lose only a small amount of energy as they travel. Beta particles also travel quickly and lose a small amount of energy during travel. Beta radiation only penetrates a small distance through tissue. The primary external effect of beta radiation is on the skin. Neutron radiation can penetrate the body. Neutrons deposit more energy as they pass through the body than do gamma or beta radiation. Alpha particles are heavy and very energetic. They lose energy rapidly as they travel. Alpha radiation does not penetrate unbroken skin. When alpha-emitting materials are taken into the body, all of the energy is given up in a short distance directly to the body tissues. Beta-emitting materials taken into the body also deposit energy directly to the tissues. Alpha and beta radiation are the principal sources of internal radiation. The amount of damage to biological systems which results from exposure to ionizing radiation depends upon both the size of the dose and the type of radiation. A given amount of neutron or alpha radiation can cause more damage than the same amount of gamma or beta radiation. Based upon the amount of biological damage it causes, a numerical value called a quality factor is given to each type of radiation. The amount of energy that is deposited in a material when it is irradiated is called a radiation dose. There are two terms used by health physicists to express radiation dose: rad and rem. The rad is the unit used to measure the radiation dose absorbed by any material, including people, animals, and objects. However, the biological effect for equal absorbed doses from different types and energies of radiation is not constant. The quality factor is used to take into account the difference in biological effect of different types of radiation. The quality factor times the absorbed dose in rads is expressed in the special unit of dose equivalent, the rem. The rem is the common term used to express the radiation dose equivalent for workers and the public. The organs and tissues of our highly complex bodies are all made up of cells, which are the basic units of structure and function of the body. Most cells have a nucleus surrounded by cytoplasm. There is a membrane around the nucleus and a different membrane around the whole cell. The cellular processes corresponding to breathing, eating, and digesting, and getting rid of waste take place in the cytoplasm. The nucleus is the control center of the cell and also contains the genetic blueprint, the genes on the chromosomes. The nucleus controls the cycle of cell division for both normal growth and damage repair. Many body cells normally have a short lifespan. They divide at certain stages in their lives, and the daughter cells perform the same functions as the cells they came from. This is possible because all of the information needed for a cell to function is present in the chromosomes. When it is time for the cell to divide, each chromosome in the nucleus makes an identical copy of itself. The cell divides, and each daughter cell ends up just exactly like the parent cell. This process is called mitosis. Radiation can do direct damage to cells by damaging the chromosomes and by breaking the membranes. Radiation can cause indirect damage by interacting with the water, which makes up almost 90% of a cell. Very reactive free radicals are formed when ionizing radiation passes through water. In microseconds, these free radicals can combine to produce harmless hydrogen gas, or more water, or the harmful chemical hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide acts as a poison to the cell. Biological systems can repair much of the direct and indirect damage caused by radiation. Some damage to a cell can be repaired by the cell itself. Badly injured or dead cells can be replaced by the division of nearby healthy cells. The nucleus of a cell is more sensitive to radiation damage than the cytoplasm. Similarly, not all cells and tissues in the body have the same sensitivity to radiation. The most radiosensitive tissues are those that contain cells that are dividing at the time they are exposed to radiation, those that contain cells that normally divide very often, and those that are unspecialized in structure and function. Very radiosensitive human tissues include the tissues that have a part in making blood, the tissue that forms sperm cells, the lining of the intestines, and the blood lymphocytes. Highly specialized tissues that are more resistant to the effects of radiation include bones, liver and kidneys, muscles, and the brain and nervous system. Adults are more resistant to the effects of low doses of radiation than are children who are still growing and developing. A developing embryo is very sensitive to the effects of radiation because most of its cells are dividing rapidly to form the organ systems and to increase its size. The unborn baby who comes to work with its mother needs special protection. Because of the special sensitivity of the developing baby to the effects of radiation, the occupational radiation dose to a pregnant worker may not be greater than 1/2 of a rem for the entire 9 months of pregnancy, or not more than 5/100ths of a rem per month. Making sure that this exposure limit is not exceeded provides an extra margin of safety for the unborn baby. This is a reason that a female radiation worker must tell her supervisor that she is pregnant as soon as possible. The genetic effect of acute doses of radiation may be mutations which occur in the children of the exposed person. Mutations are changes in chromosomes and genes that are passed on to future generations. Some conditions and diseases resulting from gene mutations are asthma, diabetes, anemia, and Down syndrome. Mutations happen naturally in our population at a rate of 1 out of every 10 births. Experts estimate that 50 to 250 rems of radiation received at a constant low level of exposure before conception is the dose needed to double the mutation rate. It is hard to estimate the genetic risk of ionizing radiation to people because there is no population chronically exposed to enough radiation to give data on the actual genetic effects of radiation on their descendants. Somatic effects of radiation are effects that occur in the exposed individual. Prompt somatic effects are those that occur almost immediately or within a few days or weeks after the radiation exposure. One example of a prompt effect is the temporary hair loss that occurs about 3 weeks after a dose of 400 rems to the scalp. New hair is expected to grow within 2 months after the exposure, although the color and texture may be different. If cancer should develop in the irradiated area 30 years later, it would be an example of a delayed somatic effect, one occurring many years after the radiation exposure. The effects of radiation upon biological systems depend upon the total radiation dose and also upon the dose rate, which is how fast the dose is received. A whole body radiation dose of 100 rems received in 5 minutes or less is an acute exposure and may cause mild radiation sickness. A chronic radiation exposure in many small doses, such as 2/100ths of a rem per day for 50 working weeks each year for 20 years, is also a total dose of 100 rems, but does not cause radiation sickness. Acute whole body doses of 25 to 50 rems can be detected by changes in the number of blood cells. An acute dose of 50 to 200 rems to the sex organs will cause temporary sterility in both men and women. Permanent sterility will follow a 350 to 400 rem dose to the ovaries of females and a 400 to 600 rem dose to the testes of males. Without medical treatment, a whole body acute dose of 400 rems is likely to result in death for half of the exposed persons because of damage to the blood-forming cells in the bone marrow. An acute dose of 600 to 900 rems delivered to the eye will probably result in the formation of cataracts. An acute dose of 1,000 rems to an area of the skin has an effect much like a second-degree burn. Acute whole-body doses of 2,000 to 5,000 rems result in death within 3 to 10 days because of damage to the lining of the small intestine. There is no medical treatment to prevent death after this radiation dose to the whole body. When kept in a small area of the body, radiation doses in this range are used to treat cancer. Acute whole-body doses of 10,000 rems or more cause death within 48 hours from damage to the central nervous system. A 25 rem acute whole-body dose may result in detectable changes in the blood. There are no detectable biological effects following an acute or chronic whole-body radiation dose of 5 rem. The upper occupational exposure limit for radiation workers is 5 rem per year. Normal administrative working levels range about 10 to 50% of the exposure limit.